Royal Enfield Super Meteor 650. This is my review after 10,000 kilometers. Look at this beautiful bike. After this distance, I can say that it is a really well made motorcycle. The advertisement says made like a gun. It is. It is in fact. I was an owner. I had previously 4 Japanese motorbikes, and I can say that in terms of quality there is no difference, but in fact it's heavy. All the parts, like in here, as you know, as you are also owners, they are really well made. It's not thin, it's thick, it's die casted, it's aluminum die cast, but it's not slim like in stock Kawasaki Eliminator, for instance. No, the clocks, everything is thick, so it's solid, it's reliable. What happened after these 10,000 kilometers? Absolutely nothing. Absolutely nothing. I really care about oil changes because I'm crazy about it. So first in the service point after 500 kilometers, then by myself into Valvoline after when on the clock was 2,000 kilometers, then when on the clock was 4,000 kilometers, there was Shell, and when there was 7, I put Fuchs Silcolene XP Pro 10W50. So I can say that there is no oil consumption despite high temperatures. I was riding in the traffic. I was a bit afraid about the engine temperature, and I tried to ride it not to stay somewhere in the traffic, but filter cars to provide the airflow. But this is it. This really good motorbike I can recommend in terms of quality and in terms of giving a pleasure to the rider, because that pleasure factor is absolutely amazing. So far, as the owner of former 4 Japanese motorbikes, I can say that this one satisfies me absolutely and utterly. What improvement I did? Engine guards, GD, phone holder. This is the second one. First one, induction, failed after 1 year. Scott oiler. This is absolutely brilliant solution and invention. Scott oiler E-system. This is the top shelf product. Previously I had a V system, which is partially gravitational, but in fact it is vacuum. It's based on a vacuum V system, but thanks to E system, Scott oiler, the rear tire is dry. There is no even small drop of oil on the rear tire. Yes, there is on the plate, of course, because when I'm speeding on a highway, then it's spraying a bit, not spraying, but little particles are just going out. So have a look at this chain. It's well lubricated, and first time after 9,500 kilometers I have adjusted the chain. The chain clearance was done first time after 9,500 kilometers. Now you can see, have a look, it's like it should be 22 millimeters. I've measured, so it's absolutely fine. I think that next 10,000 kilometers will be fine until the next adjustment. What improvements? You can see Rhino Racing exhaust, with my own a la Leo Vince or Arrow DB killers, because the stock ones, when they did not satisfy me, the sound wasn't really good like I wanted. And the DNA full flow air filter, it gives me about 5% of the power and torque, so let's assume it's about 55 Newton meters of torque. Usually on dyno engines don't have that power which is declared by the producer, so I do not count on it. The point is that it's giving me a really big pleasure as a rider. It's amazing. Tires, have a look. Normally I think it's almost nowhere, so next 10,000 kilometers without any problems at all. Have a look at brake pads, front brake pads, easily next 10,000 kilometers. Rear brake disc, brake pads, the same. Rear tire, as you see, after 10,000 kilometers, yeah, only a slight wear. I can say that I'm not burning tires, so I really look after that, because I'm not a young boy who's just burning a tire just for fun. It doesn't suit to a cruiser to burn tire. It's not on me. I don't like it. So first oil change after 500 kilometers in a service point, 2,000 kilometers by myself, 4,000 kilometers by myself, 7, and now after 10,500 kilometers I did valve clearance adjustment. I can say that this is a really good distance, 10,000 kilometers, because the exhaust valves were 0.13, 0.15, and inlet valves clearance, it was 0.03 on 2 pieces, and next 2 ones I couldn't put the leaf to measure it, so there was almost no gap. So 10,000 kilometers is absolutely good result, good distance to make valve clearance adjustment. Absolutely amazing. I'm just wondering what will be my next motorbike, but at the moment, for few next years, this one will stay with me. So now let's go for a ride. After riding 10,000 kilometers by this motorbike, I think I can say something accurate about this motorbike, and I will divide it into advantages and disadvantages. First advantage is undoubtedly the style, its style. When I stop somewhere in public places, near restaurants, on parkings, close to parks, people and pedestrians pay attention on this bike. Very often they are talking to me, we share some opinions, and most of the people admire this motorbike and they say it's absolutely beautiful. Of course I agree with them. I haven't bought it just because of these opinions for the other people, but for myself, for my own pleasure. So I can say the style is one of the biggest advantage of this cruiser. Second advantage is the comfort. The seat is thick. There is a lot of foam, about 10 centimeters more or less, and it's much more comfortable than Honda Rebel CMX 500, which I had previously, because there I had feeling like sitting on a heap of stones, not on a chair, on a seat, on anything like that, just on a heap of stones. In here, in Super Meteor, the seat is really comfortable. After riding 350 kilometers, 400 kilometers, I don't feel any pain in my back, in my butt, so everything is really fine. Another advantage is front suspension upside down fork. I feel it in a very pleasant way. I mean, there is no diving during braking. For instance, in Honda Rebel CMX 500 or in Suzuki SV650, first when I pressed front brake, there was a punch in my hands. Then there was significant diving. The motorcycle was diving, and then started to brake. I didn't like it because that three factors, one by one, were just occurring every time I was braking. Of course, I can minimize it by first preloading the brake, and after that squeezing more with higher force to squeeze it stronger. However, that upside down front suspension gives me comfort and gives me pleasure during braking. I use much more often front brake in corners, of course gently, but I can brake without any problems. I cannot hit it, you understand it. You cannot punch the brake like crazy, because it's obvious we'll trip over. But braking in the corners, normal thing. It was not that obvious in SV650. Another advantage is that the engine has a kick-in from very bottom revs. It has a punch, nearly punch, let's call it like that, from idle. So riding 20 kilometers an hour on a second gear on a roundabout, when we exit the roundabout, you can twist the throttle and it goes really smooth. Of course, above 5,000 RPM, 6,000 RPM, it kicks really hard, but this is not the range of revs which we use in ordinary cruiser. So I really admire that the engine is willing to accelerate from low revs. That's very nice, and that's very pleasant, without any jerking. It's just accelerating. Another advantage is the sound of the exhaust, and no matter if it's a stock exhaust or it's a sport exhaust. Of course, I have assembled Rhino Racing sport exhaust to emphasize the beautiful sound coming out from two pipes. You can hear it right now. It's really beautiful. I love it, especially in tunnels, under bridges, in a close area. So I like then to make a downshift, one or two gears, and if it's not possible to accelerate, because for instance there is section control enforcement and photo radar, then I could press rear brake and open the throttle just to keep the speed the same, and then when two throttles are open, I can hear the beautiful sound of the exhaust of the engine. Another advantage is that the motorcycle is really willing to turn, to take corners. I mention it because previously my former motorbike Suzuki SV650, it was difficult really in handling in terms of corners. I had to push it. It was really something like pushing it into corners. And when I started to ride Super Meteor 650, and there was a big change. It takes corners itself. It's obvious. I like it a lot. Another advantage is the shape of the fuel tank. Maybe you're wondering why. Because that fuel tank, I think that it spreads the air while riding about 140-150 kilometers an hour on a motorway, on a highway, and I do not feel such a big pressure of air like it was in Honda Rebel CMX 500. There was a very slim and thin fuel tank, and I felt on my arms like someone was pulling me back, and there was a big pressure on my chest on Suzuki SV650, and in here it's not pointed that much. It's not aimed into my arms or in my chest, and there is a pressure, but I can easily ride 140-150 kilometers an hour on a highway for 20 kilometers, 30 kilometers. It's okay. The fuel consumption of this bike is between 4.1 and 4.5 liters. Occasionally, when I push it, it's I can ride on one tank 300 kilometers. My tank 13.5 liters. So maximum 5 liters fuel consumption, minimum 4 liters, but averagely 4.5, and that's fine. Regarding disadvantages, I could say you can always say it to every motorbike, to every car. It's insufficient power and torque. Of course, if it was more powerful, more punchy, if there was not 52 but 80 Newton meters of torque, I would use it. It would be really nice. I would use it, but in fact it's not a point to claim. I shouldn't regret it. It's fine, but I would appreciate if it was more punchy, as always. Another disadvantage is completely useless, in my opinion, tripper. That tripper could be replaced by the factory by tachometer. Tachometer would be more useful. I use the tripper as a clock, nothing else, because the app which is supposed to be used on the phone is not that easy to use. I have to log in every single time, connect it. That's too much effort. I prefer Google Maps, and this is it. I connect it with my helmet and intercom, so this is it. It's more convenient. Another disadvantage is its characteristics. I mean, the engine is air-cooled, and air-cooled engine has its own advantages and disadvantages. Advantages is for instance a simple design, simple construction, but disadvantage is the ratio, the heat ratio. Sometimes it's too cold and sometimes it's too hot. I claim that in a traffic jam, when I have to stop and there is no chance to filter other cars, I have to ride on first gear on idle, second gear on idle. It's insufficient for cooling. so I can feel the heat on my calves. It's not that pleasant, but it happens only when outside temperature is above 28 centigrades, 28 and higher. So then it's not that pleasant, but I haven't boiled the engine. The engine doesn't consume oil because it's well made. It's made like a gun. Some colleagues from India told me that if there is above 45 centigrades, it happens. Then in a traffic jam, the cooling is insufficient, and then the engine consumes slightly engine oil. But in other circumstances, never. And my opinions about it, what can I say? I've managed to reach the top speed and the limiter on 6th gear, of course on German highway, and it is 175 kilometers an hour, and there is a limiter. It's impossible to ride faster, so this is the top speed, absolutely top speed. Another factor is that the engine oil is clean and doesn't have much sludge. Slightly some particles, some metal particles cannot be visible in a dumped oil. And in an oil plug there is a magnet. On a magnet there is only a slight amount of sludge. You can have it on a finger, not more. So the engine oil is clean. It was after 3,000 kilometers. But at the beginning I prefer to change it more often. And what now? I'm just heading another 10,000 kilometers, and I'll prepare a review after 20,000 kilometers, supposedly in next year, because this year I will not ride more than 3,000–4,000 kilometers. We'll see. Anyway, thanks for watching. Have a good time.